Alright, Late Night with the Devil is in the bag. What's happening, everyone? Pragmatic Addict here. So, I'm gonna be honest. Upon hearing about this film, the only thing I could really say that I was genuinely interested in was that David Dastmalchian finally got a fucking lead role. And what other way to have that first credit than a 100% certified fresh horror film? Because I really didn't know what this movie was, even from seeing the first trailer. What I will say is that seeing the actual first tease of its horror, it did officially have me interested in this movie as a horror film and not just David Dastmalchian having this role. But where I really got invested in this movie was from its official trailer. So the big thing in the teaser, the teaser trailer, was that there was this little girl that was supposedly possessed by the devil. And during that teaser, I was like, okay, so I'm guessing that she is gonna be the main antagonist, that she's gonna be a guest on this show, this talk show host. It's gonna be a battle between him and her. What I will say is that she is basically the main antagonist of this movie still. I mean, she's supposed to be the fucking devil. But by the official trailer, I was like, well, wait a minute. There's all kinds of guests now. We're seeing a bunch of wacky characters, some in the audience, which, to put this film in very easy way of describing it, in just classic horror story fashion, this film takes place on Halloween night in 1977 on a late night talk show from a host named Jack Delroy, I believe. And this episode of this late night talk show called Night Owls, they're doing a Halloween special with there being a handful of special guests, some exorcists, some mediums. Yes, another one being a little girl that's supposedly possessed by the devil. And basically, aside from this being the setting, the big story is that this is a broadcast that went down in history as the broadcast that shocked a nation, where all the TV stations that tuned into this program, this broadcast, all the living rooms ended up getting cursed by this broadcast. And knowing officially all this is officially a horror film I couldn't wait to see. It had a really original, fun horror Halloween setting and equally interesting big picture goal going for it as well, just as an original horror film, as well as, yes, this being a very exciting light for actor David Dastmalchian. And guys, I just got out of my theater experience of Late Night with the Devil, so let's talk about this thing. So the first thing I want to mention is how the film is presented. So it actually opens up with a narrative piece where, as far as that being the opener and the presentation, it did throw me off a bit. I'm with it also having a very short runtime of 89 minutes. This isn't a film I was expecting to have this narrative piece. Really quickly, this isn't the whole movie, it is just an intro. But the way that this narrative intro works is that it's presented in the fashion of giving a rundown of the history of the program of this show, as well as this host, and even his career, which, with how solid of an idea this film was, again, with its shorter runtime, I didn't need this, but just to see that they did choose to include this with how solid the film already was, how much I had going for it, not needed, but interesting for sure. And hats off to them for even doing it. And what I will say is that how this segment wraps up, that is where it landed me, where I was like, okay, good leeway to the film, the story, a solid short and full background to the character. It was just simply something I wasn't expecting. And how it started at first, obviously I was like, well, I don't know if this is going to be the whole movie. This is a short film. Why are we getting this? And like I said, this is honestly just a good leeway for the film in general. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes and everything. There's a lot of stuff where the program will cut to commercial breaks. It'll have ads on the television while we're seeing stuff behind the scenes of the crew, this host and everything, being out of character, just being human beings, trying to unravel what the fuck they may have just witnessed. One of the things that the intro goes into is, again, the whole rundown of this program, as well as him as a host, and how he had a falling out, how he his career was kind of in jeopardy. So we see a lot of balance between him as a host, him having this character, him also being a human being, struggling with things like ratings, trying to, boost his career and everything again, with how off the wall shit goes as well. People telling him hey, we gotta cut the program, whether it be about ratings or how many people are tuning in. It's a big story about him as a human being. And with this being a Halloween special, obviously, with these things happening just like live on the air, that would be good for a Halloween special for ratings. And regardless of how actually bizarre it is and how disturbing and like dangerous that this could potentially be, it is a very good story about like the balance of like you struggling as a human being in those regards. But now one thing I'll say that I was really excited to see in the trailer is how natural the film feels and how natural you think that this could possibly go if this were like a real thing and not just like a horror movie with this premise, with the setting, which is how much the film engages, for example, like with its audience on this show. Obviously, with the setting being a late show broadcast gone wrong, how much the film centers on the audience reactions was a thing I found crucial, and I was very happy to see how much they actually went forward with that as far as like their interactions, like the guests interacting with them and like having them for like little bits, as well as seeing their reactions to the stuff, the, you know, disturbing things that occur. And another thing is that like because this is a Halloween special on a late show, when scary things are happening, it really does feel like that thing where it's like, okay, is this part of an act or is something fucked up actually going on? And what's really impressive and what makes me really happy when I'm saying all these things is that this is all just within the first act. This is before the horror, like anything really horrific even like comes into play, or like before the film even is at its peak. One kind of like funky little nitpick I have though is that like, well, I enjoyed seeing the behind the scenes stuff because it just adds again to like the story, the characters, the balances of like whatever the people. One thing I found like a little off for me was that like these are all in black and white, and I'm like, okay, it looked cool, it felt cool, but as far as like things being natural and authentic and like just feeling like it made sense, I'm like, why is this in black and white? Is someone filming it? And even in that case, why are people filming this? Because I know it sounds like interesting stuff as far as like an archive like purpose to like record stuff like this, but what I'll say is that during these behind the scenes segments, the stuff that the characters are saying and like the way that their demeanors are, it feels the most like out of this film where it's scripted. As far as like how authentic this film feels, it does really solid with that, but this is the most out of it where I'm like, this feels like part of a movie. But yes, let's get to the horror now. So a big scene in this movie, if not like one of the biggest scenes, is when this 13-year-old girl named Lily comes onto the show as a guest who is supposedly possessed by the devil. Seeing for the first real time how the horror is going to be handled in this film, getting like that first taste of it, at least like up to this point, you know, there was no fake outs, no jump scares, no cringe acting, and even more so just fucking horrifying shit that's happening here where all it's doing is just worsening. This is a really interesting film as far as like how it does horror. Again, this is a film where it feels, I feel like, as genuine as it possibly could be with the circumstances where, again, there's no fake outs, no real like jump scares or anything like that. This is a movie where I can see it being popular on streaming or like on a Blu-ray, because not just in this regard, but just in general, there's a lot of stuff where you want to rewind it and you want to pause on like certain staticky shots. The film even addresses this to a certain degree, but like going back to the horror in this regard, it's not really in your face. It's stuff where like you're just watching this broadcast, this Halloween special, where things would catch your eye, you know, in this regard, where you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem scripted. That doesn't seem like it's part of an act. What the fuck is up with that? Let's rewind it. And I really liked that. Though I will say this, the actress of this 13-year-old girl, solid actor, very well cast. I'm just gonna say that. Looking like the fucking human version of Megan. All I'm gonna say is that there's no way this actress was 13. Unless she is. Late Night with the Devil. Let's see. Alright, Ingrid Torelli as Lily. Let's see. How old is this actress? Does it even say? I'm not seeing anything about her age. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. Besides the point, very good actress, and that goes for everyone in here. Everyone in here has such a cool role, whether it's someone who's part of like the crew and everything and having to deal with like all the goings on, whether you're like someone playing the audience or someone playing a guest. Everyone has such a significant and interesting role to play in this film, and they all are such rock solid performances, and each and every character in this whole film is so memorable and so interesting and just captures you. But before I close out this review, I am just gonna get through like the rest of my little nitpicks. One thing is that it's kind of odd how this movie feels, because it is like an hour and a half and the whole movie really is just a late show gone wrong. This Halloween special, while that is like a cool idea and it is a good movie, because of how much it is like just really just this, I kind of have a hard time predicting how this will rub like casual audience, or at least like the majority of audiences. I also think that the film could have done without like certain digital effects, or like just like effects in general, like practical or digital. They are easily like just the most that take away from like the authenticity, like the authentic feel that this film mostly has. And lastly, I will say this is a case where the third act just goes off the fucking walls and does whatever the fuck it wants. But I didn't hate it because it feels necessary and like an actual climax to this film, to its story, and does more off-the-wall shit than probably the rest of the movie, which the movie does really well with. Where I was in like that gray area where I was like, okay, I didn't need this, but I'm respected that the film did it. And, you know, regardless, it is an ending that has a lot to say, a lot to theorize, a lot to rewatch. And regardless of all this, I do feel pretty confident in saying that I don't think the ending could have been more, in every sense of that word. And overall, guys, I'm gonna give Late Night with the Devil a positive review. So guys, that is gonna do it for my review of Late Night with the Devil. I definitely recommend this film. I don't know if it's my favorite horror film of the year, and I don't know if it's my favorite movie in general so far of the year, and that is just simply because of Out of Darkness. But this is a close second. But yes, guys, that is going to do it for my review of this film. Let me know what you guys thought about this film, for those that did scour it out in the wave of releases this weekend. I would definitely love to hear your opinions, just because this is a pretty interesting film. Again, like how I feel it'll rub like audiences. There's also a big thing about like AI shit in here. So just would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this one. But with all that being said, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I've been Pragmatic Addict. I hope you guys liked the video, and let me know what you thought about it in the comments below, guys. I'll see you soon.